Let's start with something that many women, often without realizing, sacrifice in relationships: their own identity. Here's the truth. When you step into a relationship, there's a natural pull to blend lives, to find common ground, to make compromises. That's healthy. But what's not healthy is when those compromises start chipping away at who you are at your core. When you silence your voice so his can be louder. When you set aside your dreams so his can shine brighter. When you bend so far to meet his needs that you forget what yours even are. Losing your identity to please a man is like slowly dimming your own light, thinking that if you glow less, he'll shine more. But what really happens is that the relationship becomes lopsided. One person is thriving while the other is shrinking. And a relationship built on one person's shrinking is not love. It's dependency, control, or fear disguised as love. I want you to think about this. How many times have you seen women give up their hobbies, their friendships, even their careers because their partner wasn't comfortable with it? At first, it looks like devotion. I gave this up for him because I love him. But over time, it becomes suffocating. Resentment builds, and worse, you wake up one day and you don't even recognize yourself. Research on healthy relationships shows that the strongest couples are those where each partner maintains a strong sense of individuality. Dr. Esther Perel, a well-known psychotherapist, often says that desire and connection thrive when there's both intimacy and individuality, when you can come together without losing yourself. If you erase your identity, not only do you lose yourself, but ironically, you also lose the spark in the relationship. We live in a culture that tells women to be givers, to bend, to sacrifice, to make it work and no matter the cost. And while love does require compromise, it should never require self-betrayal. The truth is, there are certain lines you should never cross, things you should never do for a man, no matter how deeply you care. Because the moment you do, you don't just lose the relationship, you lose yourself. Let's walk through the 5 big ones. Never lose your identity to please him. Let's start with one of the most dangerous but common mistakes women make in relationships: giving up who they are in order to keep a man happy. It usually doesn't happen all at once. It starts small. Maybe he makes a comment about how much time you spend with your friends, and so you pull back a little. Maybe he laughs at one of your passions, and suddenly you don't feel excited to share it anymore. Maybe he says your dreams are unrealistic, and instead of fighting for them, you start doubting yourself. And before you know it, you've slowly chipped away at your identity, piece by piece, until you barely recognize yourself. And here's the painful truth. When you lose yourself in the name of love, it's not love anymore. It's self-abandonment. We often convince ourselves it's noble, that sacrificing who we are shows devotion, that giving up our hobbies, our time, even our ambitions proves how committed we are. But that's not devotion. It's erasure. And what's worse, it doesn't actually earn you the respect, love, or security you think it will. In fact, it often does the opposite, because when you abandon yourself, you send a silent message. I don't believe I'm worth protecting. I don't believe my dreams, my voice, my identity matter. And if you don't believe that, why would he? Think of your identity like the roots of a tree. It's what keeps you grounded, stable, and alive. Your values, your passions, your friendships, your goals. Those are your roots. The moment you start cutting those roots away to make room for someone else, you're weakening your own foundation. And a relationship built on one person's roots and the other person's emptiness can never flourish. I once spoke to a woman who had a deep love for music. You remind yourself that your voice, your needs, your heart, they matter. Now, let's be clear, setting this boundary doesn't mean being combative or defensive all the time. It means standing firm in your worth. It means saying, I love you, but I will not allow you to speak to me this way. I care about us, but I will not tolerate being dismissed, belittled, or ignored. And if he cannot respect that boundary, then he does not deserve access to you. Respect is the soil that love grows in. Without it, love cannot breathe. Without it, you'll spend your life trying to prove yourself instead of living fully as yourself. So if you're with someone who can't give you basic respect, don't fool yourself into believing you have love. What you have is control, convenience, or comfort, but not love. And here's what I know for sure. The moment you demand respect, you filter out the wrong kind of men and make space for the right kind of love. Never sacrifice your boundaries for his comfort boundaries. Just the word can make people uncomfortable. Because for so long, women have been told that saying a no is selfish, that asserting their needs makes them a difficult or a hard to love. And so in relationships, many women give up their boundaries in the name of love, all to keep a man comfortable. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are doors. They don't lock people out. They create the space where healthy love can exist. Boundaries are what protect your energy, your time, your body, and your spirit. And when you sacrifice those boundaries just to avoid conflict, you are teaching yourself that his comfort matters more than your safety, your peace, and your worth. It often starts small. Maybe he wants to text you at all hours, and instead of saying, I need my space at night, you stay awake until 2 a.m. because you don't want to upset him. Maybe he pushes for physical intimacy before you're ready, and you go along with it because you're afraid he'll leave if you say no. Maybe he insists on making every decision, and you stay quiet because you don't want to be called a controlling. And every single time you erase a boundary for his comfort, you send yourself the message. My needs don't matter as much as his. And over time, that belief eats away at you. You begin to lose your sense of agency. You live in a relationship where you are constantly negotiating with yourself instead of with him. I remember talking with a woman who told me she hadn't had a weekend to herself in 3 years. Her boyfriend dictated how they spent their time, and if she ever said she wanted to see friends or spend a day alone, he accused her of not caring about him. And so she gave in again and again, until one day she realized she didn't even know what she wanted anymore. Her life was entirely scheduled around his comfort. That's not love. That's control disguised as intimacy. Here's the powerful truth. A man who genuinely values you will respect your boundaries, even when they inconvenience him. He will not guilt you for needing space. He will not punish you for saying no. He will not make you feel like your limits are weaknesses. Instead, he will see your boundaries as signs of self-respect, and he'll love you more for them. Healthy love doesn't fear boundaries. It thrives on them because boundaries create clarity. They say, this is where I end and where you begin. This is how I can love you without losing myself. Without them, resentment grows, self-worth diminishes, and the relationship turns into a silent power struggle. So never sacrifice your boundaries for his comfort. Because the moment you do, you stop being a partner and start being a people pleaser. And people pleasing may keep the peace in the moment, but it destroys your peace in the long run. Remember this, boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about protecting the version of you that deserves to be loved in the first place. Never carry his emotional burden alone. Love makes us want to show up for the people we care about, to listen, to comfort, to hold them when life feels heavy. That's what intimacy is, being a safe place for each other. But here's where it becomes dangerous, when the balance is gone. When your role shifts from partner to caretaker, when his emotions, his moods, his struggles become the center of the relationship and yours slowly disappear. There is a difference between supporting a man and carrying him, between being compassionate and being responsible for every piece of his emotional world. And too often, women are taught that love means fixing, healing, absorbing. They end up believing, if I just love him harder, if I just carry his pain for him, he'll finally be okay. But here's the truth. You cannot heal wounds you didn't create. You cannot do the work he refuses to do. And you cannot carry someone else's emotional burden without breaking your own back in the process. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're walking through life with your own backpack. Inside it are your responsibilities, your feelings, your struggles, your dreams. It's already heavy some days. Now imagine he comes along and says, here, hold mine too. And because you love him, you take it. But his backpack isn't light. It's filled with unprocessed trauma, anger, insecurity, fear. And before you know it, you're carrying two loads while he walks freely. That's not partnership. That's emotional labor. I once spoke with a woman who told me her boyfriend would spiral every time he felt insecure. He would sulk, withdraw, or lash out. And she felt it was her job to calm him down, to reassure him, to keep the peace. But over time, she realized something painful. She was exhausted, drained, and resentful, while he had no motivation to change. Why would he, when she was doing all the emotional heavy lifting for him? That's the trap. When you carry his emotional burden alone, you don't just harm yourself. You also prevent him from growing. You rob him of the opportunity to take responsibility for his own healing. And the relationship becomes a cycle where you give and give while he takes and takes with nothing left for you. Healthy love looks different. In healthy love, both people carry their own backpacks. Both people take responsibility for their own emotional regulation. Both people show up for each other, not one person doing all the work while the other coasts. Now, that doesn't mean you don't support him. Of course you do. It means you listen, you encourage, you walk alongside him, but you don't do the work for him. You don't carry the burden that belongs to him. You don't lose yourself in the process of trying to save him. Because here's the hard truth. If a man cannot or will not take responsibility for his own emotional well-being, no amount of love from you will fix that. And if he truly values you, he won't want you to break yourself just to hold him together. So never carry his emotional burden alone. Love him, yes. Walk with him, yes. But let him carry his own backpack, because when both people are strong enough to hold themselves, that's when a relationship becomes unshakable. Never give up your dreams to build his. There's a certain narrative that has been fed to women for generations. Stand behind your man. Be the supporter, the encourager, the one who sacrifices so he can shine. And while supporting your partner is beautiful when it's mutual, it becomes dangerous when it's one-sided. Because too many women give up their own dreams to build his, and in the process, they erase their own future. It often begins with small compromises. Maybe you take a step back from your career so he can pursue his. Maybe you put off going back to school because his schedule is demanding. Maybe you silence your passion project because he says it's not practical. At first, it feels like love. It feels like partnership. But slowly, the imbalance grows. And before you know it, you've built his world at the cost of your own. Here's the truth. Your dreams are not optional. They are not hobbies to be shelved, not luxuries to be postponed until everything else is perfect. They are the lifeblood of your identity, the fire in your soul that makes you you. And a man who truly loves you will never ask you to set that fire out. He will fan the flames. He will stand beside you and say, "Go after it. I've got your back." I once heard a story about a woman who wanted to start her own business. She had the vision, the passion, and the drive. But her partner told her, "That's risky. Why don't you just focus on supporting me instead?" And because she loved him, she listened. She poured all her time and energy into his career. Years passed, his success grew, and hers never started. When the relationship ended, she was left with nothing but regret. Not just for losing him, but for losing herself. That's the cost of giving up your dreams. One day, you look back and realize you built someone else's legacy while neglecting your own. Now, let's be honest, relationships require compromise. Sometimes you do pause one dream for another. Sometimes you take turns. Sometimes you adjust timelines. But there is a massive difference between compromise and complete sacrifice. Compromise says, let's both build together, even if the timing is different. Sacrifice says only one of us gets to live fully. And if only one person is allowed to thrive, it's not love, it's inequality dressed up as devotion. Here's what I want you to remember. Your dreams are not negotiable. They are a part of your identity. And when you let them die, a part of you dies with them. A healthy partnership is not about one person winning. It's about building a life where both can thrive. So never give up your dreams to build his. If your love requires you to shrink, to abandon yourself, to silence the deepest parts of your soul. That's not love worth keeping. The right man will never dim your light. He'll help you shine brighter. So here's the truth. Love should never cost you yourself. Not your identity, not your respect, not your boundaries, not your emotional balance, and not your dreams. The greatest lie women have been told is that sacrifice is proof of love, but real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love doesn't silence your voice or dim your light. Real love sees you, values you, and celebrates you exactly as you are. And here's the most important part. When you honor these 5 truths, you don't just protect yourself, you set the standard for how others will treat you. You show the world, this is my worth, this is my life, this is who I am, and the right man will never be threatened by your strength. He will never fear your boundaries. He will never ask you to give up your dreams, because the right man doesn't need you to sacrifice who you are to love. He needs you to be fully, unapologetically you, because that's the woman he fell in love with in the first place. So never lose yourself for love, because the moment you do, it isn't love anymore. And you, my friend, deserve a love that honors every single part of you.